Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today at the Women in Horror panel. And I'm so excited to be, the moderator for this panel and just be sitting here at this panel because this is an amazing group of people. And I just can't wait for you guys to listen to this conversation. So let's get started with Linda. Please introduce yourself.
Why Showa. My name is Linda Addison. I write weird stuff. I win awards. And there you go.
See, I told you she would do it better than me. Mine would have been 20 minutes long. All right, Michelle.
Hi, I'm Renee Lane, and I write weird stuff too. A lot of it is historical horror, and I write about women of color mainly.
Samantha?
Hi, I'm Samantha Bryant. I'm best known for my menopausal superhero series, but I am a fledgling horror writer. I mostly write short form horror so far, and I've got a pile of anthologies. And in recent years, I've published as much horror as I have hero, so, who knows?
Lee?
Oh gosh, they're all so humble, aren't they?
I know. I'm saying mine would have been forever and a day, but
Yeah, exactly. They've got bios as long as you are. My name is Lee Murray, and I am also a writer of horror and weird and thrillers, and I am from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm a USA Today best-selling writer, and I have a couple of Bram Stokers and a Shirley Jackson Award, and I am absolutely thrilled to be on this panel with these powerhouse women. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, sure. RJ?
Hi, so I'm Rhonda Jackson Garcia, aka RJ Joseph. I'm an academic and creative writer, mostly in the horror genre, and I write mostly specifically about the intersections of race and gender in the horror genre and popular culture, and I'm super excited to be here.
So I just want to say that, and I'm Elle Marie Wood, your friendly moderator for today. Psychological horror author. But I'm just here to say I invited my friends to this panel. So if we go off tangent, this is the way it was designed. Frankly, I invited people that I knew that I could talk with and enjoy talking with. So let's just dive right in. I will ask the question that everyone expects the first, pretty much. And that is, how did you start in the genre? I'm not going to pick anybody. Remember, this is a round table. If we could do this in person, we would just have coffee and chat. So tell me, anyone, whoever wants to go, how did you start?
Well, I'm going to start since I started the last round. How did I start in writing or horror?
In horror.
Okay. So I had been writing a little bit of a time before I actually was able to go into writing about horror, mostly because there was a lot of real life horror in my life growing up. So I needed to process that stuff. So I wrote some science fiction and a little fantasy before. And by the time I got to college or out of college, I'd processed it enough that I was ready to face it inside. So that would be like, I don't know, almost 50 years ago.
See, she says that and I'm like, what? I try not to count my years. I'm sorry.
Listen, I'm gonna keep saying it until I look one day, somebody's like, oh, you don't, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna start lying about my age now because you're not ready to say I don't look my age. Okay.
Anybody else want to share how they got in?
For me, when I was a little kid, I looked like Laura Ingalls Wilder, but really I was Wednesday Addams. And I think all my earliest loves and story are horror in one kind or another. Like, the versions of the fairy tales that my grandmother told me, those are the ones where people lose their toes and get their eyes plucked out, right? I didn't have the clean, sanitized ones. And I was raised Jewish, and nobody lied to me about what the stories in the Old Testament say. And then, I got away with, I got $1 once a week to spend at a used bookstore to buy comic books. And there were often horror comics in there, and my mom did not pay much attention to what I picked. So I was pretty steeped in horror from the outset. I think the earliest stories I loved were all horror.
I grew up in a household where horror is a shared love. And so there were always books. Most of the things that were on television were horror or science fiction. And so it's the genre of comfort for me. And so while I use it to explore some of the traumas in my life, it's probably the easiest genre for me to do that in because it is the genre of comfort for me.
Oh, well, I guess that I've told a lot of people about, you know, how I ended up writing horror, and I kind of, well, I've always consumed a lot of horror, so not films, but read a lot of horror growing up. But when I started writing, I fell into that trap of write what you know. And so I wrote this kind of little breezy, chick-litty thing about running marathons, because at the time I'd run quite a few marathons and ultra marathons, and I thought, oh yeah, I could do this. So I wrote this really lighthearted, fun thing. And then I realized that it's sort of like, it was great. It helped me learn to write and all the things that you have to know about being a writer and the process of getting your work published, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, and I'm quite proud of that work because it went off to, you know, the Frankfurt Book Fair and all this. But then I realized that actually that wasn't what I wanted to write. I didn't want to come back and write another chicklet. I wanted to write about the things that really concerned me. And that kind of, for me, I kind of feel like that we all eventually progress to the dark side because we need to write, to continue to write, to sustain us. We need to write the things that resonate for us, that are important to us, that allow us to explore those really vital issues that cause us concern and cause us fear. And then for me, actually, that's kind of brought me right back to write what you know, because now I'm writing about otherness and expectation and duty and some of those traumas and horrors that I felt growing up and being othered as a sort of Chinese New Zealander. So I've kind of come full circle, and I sort of feel like horror is the mature writer's place to be. I don't know. I don't know. And maybe I was a bit slow learning that compared to other people, but to me, I feel like it's the most authentic place to be, because as writers, it allows us to explore the things that really matter to us.
That's the blurb of the day so far. Just saying.
Wow.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm gonna
I don't know that I've been called mature that often.
Right. That's not a word people use when they talk about me, but whatever.
Oh, yes, I love that. I'm gonna steal it.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, I don't know that I so much as chose horror as horror chose me. So I mean, I'm literally a lifelong horror fan. Grew up in a house full of books. My parents were always reading something. We always read stuff. But you know, I also grew up Southern Baptist. So that's kind of that dichotomy where sex, no. Horror, yeah, okay, whatever. It's kind of fake anyway, right? So, so I grew up reading this. Didn't always write it though. I started out writing romance. It was way more acceptable for a little Southern girl to do that, except that it was always so dark. Everything I do, it turns dark. And so, you know, at some point I just kind of went, you know what? I just have to accept this. I am who I am. This is what I do. And I love it. So here we go.
Yeah. That there's a common thread there, guys. It's like from a long time ago, we've all been steeped in this. So, all right, let me ask you this. There used to be a practice where women wrote under a pen name to remove the certainty of gender, right? And any assumptions that could be made related to that stuff. Have you found, or now or before, early in your career, resistance to your work because it was coming from a woman?
I'm gonna just say real quick that I didn't find resistance as much as I thought there was resistance. When I was sending my stuff, my science fiction, like the Isaac Asimov science fiction magazine many years ago, there were almost no women names in that magazine. Now there's lots, but so I thought the only way I can get published is I had to have, you know, like I was going to be L. Addison or something like that, and not have Linda. I took a workshop with Nancy Kress, who's a multi-award winning science fiction writer and a friend now. At that time, I said this concern to her, and she said, never gonna forget this because I keep telling everybody. She said, well, Linda, if you write well enough, they won't assume that the character is female, which was my concern, you know, starting a story. And I was like, oh no, you did not tell me to write better. what? So I took that to heart because I'm always trying to learn. To this day, I'm trying to learn. So I just gave up the idea of using a fake name and just learned how to write well so that no one would assume that character is female just because it's written by a Linda.
I don't know that my work is any less well received or more well received because of my gender, but I do get some surprise when people meet me. I guess I don't look much like a horror writer. I am also a middle school teacher, and I probably look more like a middle school teacher and someone's mom, right? But you know, the inside of my head looks a little different than the outside.
Amen.
Yeah, I started writing, y'all, like 100 years ago. So this is where I have to date myself. I started sending stuff out in the early 90s. And I very much wholeheartedly, because did I mention that I'm Southern? I think we talked about that already. Yeah, so I mean, that's like a whole aesthetic, right? And so I've always written horror under my initials, partially because of that. I mean, that's my real, used to be prior name, right? But it's because, yeah, it's a real thing that if it was ever a thought, like I've been in bookstores in the horror section where I'm listening to people talk about the books they're going to buy, and oh no, women can't write horror. I mean, literally standing right there, like nothing of mine was on the shelves, but like I'm listening to these dudes and I'm like, oh man, I'm so screwed. Like I'm never gonna be able to write this stuff. But when I did first start writing, I was writing romance anyway. And so it kind of helped that I had these initials that I could fall back on, because I didn't want romance fans and readers to kind of get my horror work confused. One set of folks you do not want to piss off is Romancelandia. I love them dearly and I hold them in such high regard, but I did not want to piss them off. And so like, let's be different people. But I totally got a lot of that here, and being on sub. I mean, don't get me wrong, I write about women anyway. And at the time that I started here in the early 90s, the only people that probably wanted to write about women in any depth were other women. And so I have seen some of that, unfortunately, and that's hence the initials. Now nobody cares, right? They're just like, oh yeah, that's her. She's doing that old crazy stuff that she's always doing. But back at that time, it wasn't that easy, especially not being here in the South.
Mm-hmm.
I've never gotten any, I don't think I've ever gotten any pushback about being a female horror writer. I think in general, this is hard work. A lot of time and effort and empathy and whatever else you're putting into your work goes into it. Take credit for it. No, I'm not using anyone else's name. This is my work. My name is going on the cover of that book or at the top of that story. And if people don't want to publish it because I'm a woman or a woman of color, well, then they don't have to publish it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you, girl.
Right.
I'm lucky because, well, sort of lucky, like I have a name that many people, particularly in the United States, think is male.
Right.
So I start out with, I've written a lot of military fiction, based in New Zealand with male protagonists, and a lot of blokes think, oh, hey, Lee Murray, he writes well,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm probably got around it a little bit that way. Of course, in the horror community, everyone knows that I am very much a she, but I think that has helped and may well have helped me. And one reviewer, blurber of my work, has actually said she writes like a man. And, I kind of don't know whether to be offended by that or not, because actually I write like me. And but I think what she was trying to say was, people, she writes authentically. She writes these characters authentically. I think she meant it in the kindest possible way. But yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? So, if people are going to be offended that you're a woman writing horror, then that's their problem. I agree with Michelle. If your writing is strong and you're proud of it, then yeah, it should have your name on it. Absolutely.
And I just wanted to add real quick, 40 years ago or so, since there weren't women writing horror. And so I know that there was a sort of a thing that women can't write horror. Now, no one said that to my face, maybe because my face says, I will slap you. But you know, so I never actually came up against that, but other women have come up against that. No one has actually gotten in my face and said that. And now, no, they don't say it now, but you know.
You know, interesting. That's an interesting point. All of the points are. Starting out, and I think I started sending things like actively in the early 2000s, if not the late 90s. I can't remember. Really forget it. Doesn't matter. It was a long time ago. But I was hearing, oh, you don't look like a horror author. I still hear, oh, you write horror? Really? And they can't, some people can't get by the surprise. And I keep thinking, what is that about? I mean, depending upon where they say it, right? If it's at a specific venue and it's not, then I'm in a different capacity, I can understand. I don't. But what does a horror author look like? I mean, we don't all look the same. So, you know, the conversation is a little strange to me when we're dealing with industry as opposed to just out in the quote unquote real world, you know, where people won't see me in that capacity and wouldn't understand that. But the other thing I've always been challenged with is, yeah, it's not a pen name. My name is Elle Marie Wood. My name is Lisa Marie Wood. Legitimately, that is my name, right? I thought Elle Marie sounded cool. I also like Lisa. You know what I mean? I don't know, whatever. I thought Elle Marie was neat, so I did it. And but how do you go to signings? This is one thing I've never understood. How do I go to signings and like? So if I'm saying my name is, you know, LM Wood. And now you don't know if I could be Larry Wood, right? You don't know until you see me and I'm not Larry. Now what now? I mean, now you know I'm not Larry. So what are we doing? The cat's out of the bag at the first signing. So I never really understood what was going to be accomplished in that way, unless you just never spoke with anyone. You never had the opportunity to do the fun things that authors get to do, which is go and talk to their readers. So I don't know. That was an interesting thing. But now that we've talked a little bit about that, let me ask you this. There's the whole, the terminology own voices is out, right? We hear it all the time now. And it's in the writing world. It's starting to fall into the again, the real world. I hear people saying this kind of thing. They don't actually know what it means for us, but they're saying it, whatever, they're trying, right? And you hear these different things about creators from different ethnic backgrounds typically, but do you think we could utilize that term? Could we claim it as women and say, oh, you know, like you can only write our own voices? And what connotation would that have? Are we then saying only women can write women? And if we are saying, 3 questions, guys, if we are saying that, what slippery slope do we fall down, if any? I mean, so can we claim own voices as women? And then what are we trying to say if we say that? And what's the repercussion if we do say that?
So for me, I've not really attracted to that concept because I consider myself a human writing, okay? So, you know, yes, I have a womb. Yes, I have brown skin and a blue mohawk, but I'm still a human.
Today,
I'm still a human writing. And I've written characters that were Black, that were women, that were men, that were Chinese, that were African, that were American Indians. So I personally have no attraction to that. I have no problem with someone else who wants to own that at all.
I just had a conversation with another writer friend, another horror writer, who presents as white and male. But there's a lot going on in his family history that you cannot see when you meet him in person. And we were having this conversation about who gets to write who. And he was really concerned about speaking for others. And I said, well, tell me about your family, okay? Here's the thing. You can write whatever you want. And if someone bothers to ask you about it, you can tell them the personal details about what informs your authentic voice to talk about that. And if they still have a problem with it, again, they don't have to publish it and you can send it somewhere else. But I feel like we get very concerned about what people look like on the outside, and then that determines what their voice is supposed to be. I don't think that's enough to inform people what your authentic voice is. Because, you know, a lot of us look the same or similar here on this panel, but we all have very different experiences. And even if you gave us all the same writing prompt, we're going to tell a different story. So I don't know that that is necessarily something we should be policing that closely.
I know when I don't mind if kind of own voices approach gives me an opportunity, you know, like there's Women in Horror Month, and sometimes that means somebody's more likely to put their eyes on my work and consider it because I'm a woman writing horror. I'll take whatever small boost I can get, right, to get my words out there in front of people. But like you, I don't only write female characters. I mean, how boring would it be if every one of my characters was like me? Myself, I am actually kind of boring. I like all my horror in my fiction. I like my life nice and steady and boring. So why would I write people like me or entirely like me? So I think the key always when you're writing somebody who's different from you is to cue into your empathy and don't write something you don't know anything about. You know, make sure you've found your window in, and it never hurts, especially if you're trying to write somebody who's like a lot younger than you, a lot older than you, from a totally different place than you, with a different kind of skin or religious background than you, to find somebody who shares those characteristics and let them read your work and take the feedback, learn from it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't, that own voices thing is so tricky. First of all, I do think that anybody can write whatever. Write whatever you want to write. Write whatever you are bold enough to do. Bring whatever characters you want to bring. But the thing about being a good writer is good writers do research. And if you are writing characters that aren't like you and whose experiences you don't really share, you should be researching that. You should not be putting out these stock characters that are stereotypes, that are harmful, that, you know, and so the problem that I find though with not talking about own voices is when it comes to who gets the opportunity. So I, as a Black woman, I mostly write about Black women, and they're not necessarily all me, but they're Black women that I know. I'm surrounded by Black people. I mean, and so the thing is, though, if I'm writing authentically from Black women's experiences and that my story is unattractive because the publisher, the editor would rather take a story from someone who is not a Black woman, who is writing, let's say, a Mammy character, or who is writing the Black Jezebel character, the angry Black woman, the thugged out Black dude, they'd rather have that story than my story. Well, see, now I have a problem with that. We wouldn't even need the title. We wouldn't even need own voices if everybody was given the shared playing field. And I think the thing that it makes me think about most is I know that that El Marie has heard this, and Michelle has probably heard this also, but I remember vetting a book to use in my classes once. I saw the book, it said, oh, it's these authentic stories about urban Black and brown young people. And I thought, this is great. I love to use new modern stories in my classes. I get the book, and the first story I'm looking at, I'm like, wait a minute. The character's Latina. She doesn't sound like she's Latina, and I don't recognize this. So I go to look at who the author is, and it's not a Latina, and it's also not a young person. And so I really felt some type of way about that, because all I could think about was all these young people that are in this book that their white male teacher decided to write about. Did he ever give them the opportunities to write their own stories? Right. Did he ever say to them, hey, I have an idea. Why don't y'all write stories? I'll pick the best of them. I'll serve as editor. I'll compile it, and we'll put this book out with your stories. And that's not how that happened. That's why those stories fell flat. And I just literally, I didn't even recycle that book. I felt kind of bad. I didn't even put it in the recycle bin at work. I just threw it in the trash. I was so highly offended. I mean, I was like, you took these stories and you created these cardboard characters. So I get why own voices is important, because he got that opportunity. He got that publishing opportunity, got that check, he got that visibility to write other people's stories. And I know that had he given them the chance to write their own, that book may not have ever been published. So this is why it's kind of important to let people tell their own stories as opposed to prioritizing other people telling those stories. And until we're on that playing field, I think we're going to always have to have some way to delineate that, at least a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance, isn't it? And I love what everyone has said about this. In New Zealand, we have the Bill of Rights. It's a little bit different here. So we have a sort of a Bill of Rights which allows us to write what we like, you know, in terms of creative work. So happy for us. But of course, we have to do our research and ensure authenticity, as Michelle said. All of those things, all of those points are highly valid. And I think also, you know, here we are, we're speculative, you know, horror writers. So we're writing about ghosts and demons and serial killers. Is anyone asking their permission and getting their, you know, getting their work checked, you know, sensitivity readers? I mean, there's a question to be asked there, right? You know, because I think, you know, I think we just have to be a little bit careful about that balance of authenticity and making sure our work resonates and is appropriate. And if you don't feel you're part of that group, then you probably aren't. And, you know, you can self-select in that sense. One of the things I think is a little bit of a concern is the whole, you're the only person on this anthology because we need one authentic voice. And that tokenism concerns me a little. And so, you know, and the women in this group are probably being asked for those stories, you know, and it's a balance, isn't it? Because we're so excited to be invited and so flattered that they would, you know, that an editor or a publisher would think our work was worthy, but then also we're the only one, you know, and you don't want to be the sole voice for and speak for all of your group, you know, all women or all Asian women or all Black women or all Southern Baptist women. So I think it's a dangerous, it's exciting and provocative. It's important because it's moving us towards more progressive representation across the board in our fiction. But also we don't want this other side of it, which is kind of excluding the people who need to have, you know, who need their voices out there. So yeah, it's a very important, provocative discussion, and we need to be having it, but we also need to not narrow our field of what we're writing.
I think, you know, what you're just saying, and also I think Michelle was saying about research. I mean, I don't write about other things other than me without doing some research. And I don't mean about reading a book about Chinese. I'm talking about going to blogs and seeing the world through Chinese eyes. I'm talking about a whole lot of things you do, including having someone Chinese read your work. And I have spent a lot of time, and I will continue, pushing back on, let's get the first Black woman that won a Bram Stoker in our anthology. And I'm like, that would be me, by the way. So I'm like, no, you know what? So, you know, I push back on that in the sense of I don't not take it, but I have a lot of stuff at this point. So I say, you know what, I can't, but I know some people. And I try to widen that door where that window that they're looking through and seeing only me, and widen it to like the hundreds that are actually out there. So as you said, Lee, it is a balance. I mean, we need, you know, like RJ is saying, we know right now that a lot of the publishing opportunities are not going to diverse communities, but the push that's happening in horror, sci-fi, and all the other communities of people going, you can't do that with your anthology. That table of contents didn't have any women, didn't have any. I mean, I hope it'll be more than just women and Black soon. You know what I'm saying? I need to see a whole lot more situations going on there. And so it's all like a messy mess, but it's all moving in the right direction. And whenever I've had an opportunity to edit books, you know, other than Sycorax's Daughters, I was one of the co-editors, and that was specifically Black women in horror, which was major because at that time there was no such. But now, like a lot of the other editing anthologies and things I've done, I've reached out to everything, not just men, women, color, trans, everything, because I feel like there's so many stories that need to be told from their points of view, like RJ says, the authentic points of view, not the only, but important. So that was my rave. Sorry. Not
No,
sorry.
it's
Not
perfect.
sorry.
Well, I put this question in there kind of having a feeling for what everyone was going to say. I told you I invited my friends. I mean, I knew you. But it's important to discuss because I think that sometimes things get out of hand, and own voices might have come from a good place. I'm sure it did. But, the flip side of that, it's exclusionary, and it's, now you put yourself in a different bucket. It might not be the same bucket you were in before, but in a different bucket, it's still a bucket, and you got to fight to get out of that. And that in and of itself is unfortunate, but it's fact. And I think that sometimes we is the collective, we get very excited about the bucket or the distinction that's been created, or feeling like we're being seen, but it's just a shifting of buckets as far as I can tell. And it's difficult. It's a very difficult thing to traverse because you want to get out there. You want to, get your work, especially if it depends upon when you're coming into the industry. Linda, you've done so much. So at this point you can say it, not me, but here's 10 other people to try.
Exactly.
Right. But I mean, luckily I've actually done that twice. Wow. Right. But I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa, I'm actually going to do it. I'm doing it. Right. But I mean, 20 years ago when I came in, I wouldn't have been in the position to do that. I would have been trying to gobble up everything I could get. And 20 years ago, I will say the buckets didn't exist. So I was literally like, me, I'm right here, So it's difficult, but I would agree with everyone. I don't pound own voices me. Don't do that. Because when it's happened to me, I'd make people take it off. I'm like, please don't do that, because that is a distinction that puts me in a bucket. Bucket is the word of the day. Okay.
There's also the thing though, that the way that own voices is used as a cudgel nowadays, like some identities aren't as apparent. And I've seen, oh my gosh, Twitter is such a cesspool in this way where, somebody writes this book and then people go, but are you own voices? And my thing is, I'm Black, very apparently, very clearly, very much so, blackity black. I can't be anything else. Right. But there are some people whose their intersecting identities, they may not want to have to self-identify as queer, even though they are. And so they write this work, its own voices, but they don't want to have to come out just to sell this work. And so it's the way that it's being used as a cudgel. That it's not safe for some people. Some people are not able to say, I am disabled. And so to kind of dismiss the work, well, if you're not willing to come out, that was just a huge mess. If you're not willing to come out and say you disabled and queer, then you don't get to say its own voices. It's like, says who? Like, really? Are you for real? And it just seems like it's yet another gate to hurdle. It's another gate. It's just a whole mess, man.
It is.
Humans are messy. We are messy. This is the thing I taught my son from the time he was 4 years old, and he's a lot older now. Humans are messy. Even at our best thought process, we stumble, we fall, we make mistakes. So all we can all do individually is let each person be themselves. That's why like I said, I insist on being human. If you're going to buy my book because I'm a Black woman, fine, whatever, buy the book. But what I'm saying is, like, when I'm talking to you, I want you to relate to me as a human writing. If you want to talk about writing, a human living. And anything else, I'm like, that's just one little part of me. And okay, I'm not really interested. I'm going to go over here and have a glass of wine. That's my backup. I'm like, I'll be right back. And you know what? I'm of the point now, I don't have to come back. I don't care. You think I'm rude? Fine.
No, I've literally had interviews where someone was, wanting to tell me that I should be writing a specific way. And I'm like, really? This is what we're doing? Because you have like 2 more minutes of this before I'm like, thank you, good night. I don't know what you want from me, because anyone that knows me knows that is absolutely not the approach to bring to me at all. So it's whatever. And in the end, I think that, people say, well, you limit your readership by, perhaps alienating people because they think you should do whatever. And I say, well, those people are going to read the book and be disappointed anyway because I didn't do it. So the readership is going to change no matter what, if that's the group that I'm dealing with. They're in the wrong spot. And I think that's
does,
the key.
yeah.
We have to
It
find
really
our voice.
comes down to what are you respecting? And
Mhm.
for me, I respect the stories and poems that come to me and through
Right.
me. And so if it's something other than what somebody expects, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
there's no way you're going to please everybody, of course. And if you try to write something that does, what have you written? A Dixie cup?
Right.
It's I can't imagine if your work pleases everybody, then it must please them at this really super low bar way that they'll forget about 2 seconds after they read it.
It's not possible. It's not possible. So you might as well be true to yourself.
Gotta be true to
That
yourself.
is. You
Mhm.
know, if you only want to write Black characters, that's cool. You know what I'm saying? I got no problem if that's your truth, but don't tell me mine.
Right. Well, I don't care if your whole every time you write a book, it's about a lizard or a dragon, which we all know my thing with dragons. I don't like dragons. I know it's pretty, but I just don't like them. They don't do what I expect them to do. I expect them to be really fierce all the time, and they're not. And whatever, that's my thing. But if every book you write and the dragon's speaking somehow, whatever, then you have a dragon speaking book, and this is what you love, and that's what you wanted to do. Just respect everybody. That brings me to another good point, another good question, at least. So, do you think that your work resonates with women, and are you trying to make it resonate with women?
I don't believe in trying. I shouldn't say I don't believe. For me, I don't believe in trying to write like anything.
Mm-hmm.
What I write is what comes to me. And I will say it in another way. I do mentor young writers, and I don't mean age, I mean in how long they published.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to now two young writers who said they wanted to make sure that they were representing who they were and how to do that. And my answer to them was to write what comes through you.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything we write, all of us, regardless of who the characters are and the environment we're writing our stories in, are coming through every second of our life on this planet. And so it's going to come through that way if you're writing authentically. If you're writing by equation, then you can write it the way you want. But I don't, good luck with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like to write the stories I need. And so I just hope that other people will be interested in them too. I didn't really exactly write them for anyone besides me. It's the story I need. And I'm going to try to make it into something that, you don't have to actually be inside my head to understand, that it, has some broader connection. But still, I don't write anything thinking, 50-year-old women from Kentucky like me are going to love this, right? It's not like that. It's more like, I needed to write this story. This is what this story demanded and what it became. And hopefully it will resonate with some other readers, some kind of people, some kind of humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta, I tell folks it's not easy being inside my head. There's so much stuff happening in there, right? And I'm just charged with getting it out. When the characters say, do me, this is my story, I have to do it. What I do hope ultimately, because somewhere, some other weird people, they're gonna connect with it. And that's it. Somebody somewhere needs to hear that story about that ghetto fabulous single mama, that found a haunted ring. Somebody needs to hear that. She had to be written. I was the one that had to do it. So I don't know that I necessarily aim for that. I'm just aiming to get them out of my head. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to exercise them. You said you wanted this story. I did that. Leave me alone. Here's the next person. Okay, I'll tell your story. I think that it's really difficult. Now, don't get me wrong. If there's a themed anthology, then of course I try to fit the theme. I don't want to be that writer that's like, you sent us this and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But beyond that, I would like to believe that one thing about good writers, the ones that I am a huge fan of, is that they're telling human stories anyway. Those humans just happen to be disabled sometimes. Those humans just happen to be poor sometimes. Those characters sometimes happen to be from academia. But ultimately, they're human stories. And this is a problem I have when people say, well, I couldn't connect with that story. But all humans have a journey and you couldn't connect with that human journey because you're not human. I mean, if that's what you're saying, then cool. I mean, just put it on the table. But I mean, if you're saying something else, you might just want to say that, oh, you mean humans, but not like that. Right?
Ooh, that's another one. I hope somebody's making a list of all these
Right? I'm thinking that, well, I guess you're not human.
You're not human. I want that.
I think stories, you know, particularly novels, that, you know, they take a big investment. So if you're writing something, it needs to resonate for you. You need to be proud of it because you are working on that for, I don't know, maybe a year, right? So I'm not like RJ. The stories, I have to put my hand down my esophagus and drag the stories out of me. I am not a natural writer. So for me, it's kind of like, am I proud of this? Does this work resonate for me? I am the first reader of anything that I write, and after that, you know, it's a bonus. But I do feel that tension that you mentioned, RJ, about, you know, writing for editors and publishers, and they have a specific theme that they want, and I often go back to them and I say, are you looking for a New Zealand story? Are you looking specifically for an Asian woman story? You know, or what are you looking for from me, so that I get that bit of guidance, because that can be a little bit helpful. But basically, I'm on board with what everyone else says. You know, you need to write what works for you. I do feel a little bit of pressure to write now, more so than I did before. But I started out being, I'm going to write Kiwi fiction because there just isn't a lot of Kiwi horror. There's just not enough of it. And so I went down that track, but now I feel really strongly that, you know, all my life I was growing up, there were no representations of Asian New Zealanders, and, you know, Asians have been in New Zealand for several hundred years, you know, pretty much as long as New Zealand, as the colonization of New Zealand, and, you know, and I never saw myself in any story. So now I feel a little bit more responsibility to speak. To be unquiet and to speak. But totally, if the story doesn't resonate for me, then and I don't feel safe, and I'm not with safe, I don't feel that it's my best work, I don't put it out there. So yeah, that would be my answer.
I think that when I first started writing, I was writing to what I thought an audience wanted to hear. I don't do that anymore because those stories are terrible. They don't make any sense. They have terrible, stupid endings. And so I try to write the things that are coming out of my head. I have voices in my head. I've had a chorus of voices in my head since I was a kid. And so to get rid of them, I put them on paper. I have full on dialogues of characters in my head, like in the shower, if I'm brushing my teeth or making dinner. And sometimes I have to stop what I'm doing and make sure that that conversation gets on paper. Mm-hmm. I don't know where this come from, but I'm not going to question it because they're there and there's stories that need to be told. I don't know. I don't know how I would change the way I write to fit a particular mold. Again, I write for anthologies all the time, and they have themes, and I can usually hit that theme just fine. But beyond that, I can't tell someone else's story. I can't guess what a reader wants to read. I don't know how to do that.
You know, I think just thinking about that, because I definitely have characters talking in my head. I don't know, my ideas don't come to me like that. But if I've started writing and I leave a character alone for a while because I'm just not ready to deal with that one yet, I'll get a whole bunch of, you know, and even today I had to tell you just hold on, just wait a minute. And I said it out loud, and whatever, the people in my house know that this is what's going on. Anybody else might have been surprised by that, but whatever. But when I write, often my protagonist is male. And I don't know why that is, but it is. But what I found important for me is that I make sure that the women that are in the book are represented properly. They don't just trip and fall when someone's chasing them and now someone's on them and that's it for them. Like I don't make it that simple. I make them be, you know, thinking, crafty, you know, I try to represent myself in the story as a woman but that may not be the main character. So do I think my work resonates with women? Well, I really don't know. I don't know. And they tell us, right? They tell us that women don't read horror. So how can we know? It's nonsense. But anyway, I don't know.
All
But
of us who read horror.
I don't know. I don't know what we're doing here. We're just chatting. This is not a panel full of women who've read horror. I don't know. Couldn't possibly be. But I don't actively try to resonate with women. I'm of the mind, and it's very much like what Linda said. I am a woman, so my perspective will be from a woman's perspective. Therefore, women should be able to resonate because I am writing and it's me anyway. So therefore the connection is inherent. If it's not, again, it's another matter of, hey, then this wasn't for you, right? If I have more male fans who read the books, then that's it. Then that's what it is, right? I don't go that route with it. I don't think about that too much, I guess. And that's made it easier for me to just write what I want to write and write the way that I want to write. So I don't get, pinned into that corner. So let me ask you this interesting question, because I can't believe how long we're like almost done. Can you believe it? Let me ask you this. Which is more, and think about this, which is more important to you, being a horror author or being a female horror author?
I don't have to think long because, once again, on the road of being a human,
Mm-hmm.
neither of those are personally in my soul, authentic soul, meaningful, but I know in the outside world, I'm perceived very much, have been for many years anyway, as a female horror writer, and that's all fine. The same thing happened when I made a leap with science fiction, when I had a story in Dark Matter, which was the first anthology of Blacks writing speculative. So it was science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So I had been publishing in science fiction. I actually had enough credits to be an active member of SIFWA. And so when that came out, and the whole thing was like, and these are all Black writers writing speculative, I had an editor call me and say, oh my God, Lynn, I didn't know you were Black. And I was like, how would you? Because at that time, people weren't doing a lot of conventions. There wasn't social media where you could see people. And I was like, yeah, you wouldn't know that, would you? Even though one of the biggest stories I had was Little Red in the Hood, which was like this inner city version of Little Red Riding Hood. You know what I'm saying? So I, inside of me, doesn't really matter, like February was Black History Month. Fine, bring all the Black stuff, horror. This month is Women in Horror Month. Good enough, bring it on. Literally, I don't really care.
Yeah, I don't exactly feel like, similarly, I am female. I don't have a problem with being female. I'm not particularly interested in being male, but it's not, when I'm thinking like what defines Samantha, that's just the exterior that I was born with and have been comfortable with, right? It's and kind of the same with being a horror writer. Yeah, I like to write horror. I also like to write science fiction and romance and superhero. I've got a little cyberpunk story I'm playing with, I like to write, and I especially like to write things I haven't already written. So, I think writer itself is more of a internal definition of me than any particular kind of writer or my gender or anything.
Yeah, I'm a writer. I mean, I write under the speculative umbrella, and I think most of my stuff is dark enough that it's often considered horror, but I don't know that I always set out to write a horror story. Most of my protagonists are women of color, but not all of my characters are going to be that. I'm a writer. I like to write. Like Linda, if an opportunity comes and I get to be featured for Women in Horror Month, great. I'm happy to do that. If I get featured for, Black Heritage Month in horror, excellent. That's great. But I just want people to buy my books and read my stuff and enjoy my work. And hopefully what I look like on the outside does not influence that.
Oh, I love these answers. They're so good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a writer, but you can use any adjective you choose. You can say she's a Kiwi writer, she's an Asian writer, she's a female writer, she's, but the ones I really like are award-winning writer and prolific, and rich would be good. Rich would be brilliant, like best-selling and, like sought after, must read. Those are other good terms. If you just put those ones in front of me, I'm fine with it. I'm fine.
Yes. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
She said rich is good.
Hey, I'm totally with Lee. I'm just like, look, you can call me whatever you want to call me. Just call and bring the check. Run me my money. So whatever. You want to call me the little Southern Black lady horror writer? Cool. The little middle class, too many children having horror writer? Fine. You want to call me, the writer that has a couple of degrees but talks like she came straight out of the hood somewhere? Okay, cool. I mean, I don't really care. It's just call me and pay me.
There was a time I wanted to change. This is years ago. I used to talk about changing my middle name to Linda Buy My Book Addison. And then when I have more than enough stories where I would be like, yeah, my poetry collection, buy it. And they're like, I don't read poetry. I was like, I didn't ask you to read it. I asked you to buy it. Once you give me the cash, you can do what you want with it.
Oh God.
My people have bought my book with that line. It's a line that has worked for me. I'm just saying.
We should put that on a banner. I didn't ask you to read it.
I just asked you to buy it. Mm.
Oh God, I can't.
I've sold books to waiters, bankers, oh, you're a writer? Yeah, I write, horror poetry. Oh, I don't read that. I was like, okay, let's just take a moment. Didn't ask you to read it.
Oh, that's awesome. Interestingly enough, I want to be remembered as a psychological horror author. I've spent my entire career with that as my descriptor. And that is how I want to be remembered. And I'll give a story real quick. Like when I was younger, you go to the bookstore and you're looking at the shelves and you're pulling book and whatever. And I'm looking in the horror section and I don't see any authors of color at all, like literally none, right? But then you go over to what used to be called the African American section. It was a very small little, shelf. And everybody who writes anything was on it. So you would have Langston Hughes and Octavia Butler. And I'm like, no, she's not. She should be in sci-fi. She's not getting, the accolades she should be getting. No one's over here but me right now. Everybody of all different races, genders are over in the sections, the sci-fi section, the horror section, looking at books. Only in the African-American section, you had African-Americans in the African-American section, okay, looking at the books there. And that was the day, and I was very young, very, very young. And I said, I don't want that to happen to me. I'm a psychological horror author. I am a woman. I am a Black woman, but don't put me in female studies for what? What? That's a mistake. Don't put me in African-American fiction, because somebody's gonna pick up a book of mine and have the wrong impression. I should be in the horror section. So yeah, I'm like pretty adamant about that. And I've been trying my best to make sure that I get that out there, because that is how, if there's ever anything, you look back after, you're 99 and you're looking back at your career. I want someone to say, Elmarie Wood, the psychological horror author. I mean, it's what I want.
We could just get multiple copies of your book and put you on several different shelves, put you in the women's fiction section, put you in the psychological horror section, put you in the Black people section, whatever.
Put me in the recipes.
Yeah, sure, why not? Yeah.
Make a mistake, Miss Sheldon.
People sometimes eat in your stories, right?
Why not? It's consume the fiction.
Or are eaten. Yeah.
Or eaten.
A recipe for burying the body by
may or may not be cooked first.
That's right. I just say saying. We need to have little bookmarks in those same books that say, I didn't ask you to read this, and just have it in there. I'm saying these things need to happen.
But you got to make sure you add the, but I buy the book.
Buy the book.
But buy the book.
Double-sided, So yeah, I mean, I just think that for me, that is definitely important. So let me ask you this, because oh my gosh, I can't believe it. The time is, but we're gonna ask this one last question. Aside from all of us here on the panel, name one other person that people really should read.
I hate you.
I know that was a hard one. I saved that one for last.
Man, I had a list of like 15 people.
Are you kidding? Go for it, because I can never like do it on command like that. So let's go. You go ahead.
No, I always make a list in advance because I'll get here and I'll go like, read what? But like, so I listed Tanana Reeve Dew because I just read The Between, which was awesome and right up my alley with that domestic horror, and for a lot of the book, you don't know if there's something supernatural going on or not. Last summer, I read Mexican Gothic, Silvia Moreno Garcia. And Gothic is one of my heart's kinds of stories. So I loved that. Lauren Bucas, she wrote Broken Monsters, which was just the right kind of creepy for me and had a great narrator. And then she wrote a story called Ungirls, which, oh gosh, that one got me. It was in a series called the Disorder series, which was a bunch of short, not necessarily horror, just kind of dark stories, but hers definitely felt like horror to me. And what else did I pick? Oh, Nicole Givens Kurtz. I always have to mention her.
You took mine. Come on.
I like her weird Western stuff. And in her Sisters of the Wild Sage, she has a story called Belly Speaker that I cannot think about without going. So that, I always tell her that story just walks up and taps me on the shoulder once in a while to remind me that I once read that and that it scared me. Yeah. So I'll let other people do some names.
Well, you could have stopped before Nicole. That was the one I was going to mention. Now I have to think harder again.
Well, first of all, everyone here, that's a given. Because we want must read in front of our.
That's right.
But I'm going to mention a few of my Asian sisters who are writing absolutely amazing things. I want to mention K.P. Kulski, who has a new book coming out, a novella coming out called House of Pangzu. She writes some really exciting stuff. She's discovering her sort of Asian heritage, and she's really writing some really dark and interesting stuff. I've enjoyed it. She also wrote Fair is Fresh, which is a historical horror, so definitely check that one out. Yvette Tan has just republished her Filipino horror collection called Waking the Dead, and it's fantastic. So if you're looking sort of for that intersection of culture and horror, that's a fantastic little read. I'm going to say for poetry, I'm definitely going to say Cindy O'Quinn and Stephanie Alice, yes, foundlings who have paid tribute to the wonderful Linda Addison and Alessandro Manzetti, and a fabulous found poetry collection, which I absolutely love. Also check out the Stoker list, the women on the Stoker list this year, the nominations and also the prelim list was incredible. I'm really excited about the sort of the movement towards women's fiction that we're seeing come out on the award list. So that would be my recommendation.
I'm going to jump in with three because you all are saying so many people I'd already think of, and you know, El Marie, I hate this question.
Yeah, so it's so hard.
At least some people already got mentioned. I am like obsessed with Eugene Bacon. I don't know. I am literally obsessed. Like my latest book is in another room. I can't even show it to you. I mean, come on. I don't know what kind of machine she got this writing, but apparently it's putting out a lot of stuff. Kyoto M, who does amazing, like has done a zillion novels. I want to take that novel class with her. Cherie Renee Thomas, who besides being like the queen of everything, is an amazing writer also. You already mentioned bunches of people that I would think of. And I agree with what Lee's saying. I always tell people if they want to get some new names under their bonnet, then look at the recommended reading list, even from the Stokers, because the final ballot is one thing, but the recommended list, which is on the HWA site, and you don't have to be a member to see it, you're just going to see a whole lot of names. And if you see somebody you don't recognize, then that's a good place to dip in. And of course, everyone here for sure.
I do like getting anthologies for that. Like, you know, some of my favorite, like, you know, how I found Tananarive Due in the first place is I read this anthology series called The Apocalypse Triptych. And she had a story in that, and I loved it. And I was like, okay, I need to go find other things by this person.
Yeah.
Right. So, and anthologies are not only just fun to write for, they're also fun ways to try on a variety of writers and then go look for the ones that really spoke to you.
For sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that Lisa gave us the caveat besides those of us here. So then I'm like, okay, great. That's awesome, because that would have been like, you know, 4 off my list anyway. And so, but I think that people really need to be reading Sina Pelayo. That chick is doing some huge stuff, like just in all kinds of mediums. I'm just like, girl, you get it. So got to be reading Sina. V. Castro is just excellent writer, excellent. A new to me writer that I just read, she is in the slasher anthology with me, Mocha Pennington. That's a new name to me, and I was like, that's great. On the nonfiction and academic side, Leah Anderson. I just had a chance to meet her a few months ago. I mean, her writing is phenomenal. She writes for, I think, Fangoria. And when I say goes so far deep, I mean, the sister is killing it. So these are people that we need to be reading a lot.
Awesome.
So one of the best books that I read last year, or it could have been 2020, I don't know, it's a big blur for me. Alexis Henderson's The Year of the Witching is pretty fantastic. If you haven't read it, you should. And I'm hoping it's a series. I think it's a series. Samiko Salson writes really bizarre stuff, really dark stuff, with multicultural casts that sneak up on you in really weird ways, and you find yourself in that book and you're like, I don't want to be in this book. This is so weird. Sonora Taylor is writing really great short fiction. She just came out with a collection last year that is spectacular. Haley Piper is writing, you know, horror from the perspective of a queer woman, and her stuff is spooky as shit, and you should probably check it out. I don't know, there are a lot of women writers you should be reading. Just go out there and find them, because they're all got something to tell you. They've all got a story to tell.
Oh, I just thought of another one. Have you guys read Michelle Tracy Berger's Renew You?
No.
We share a publisher, Michelle and I, and it's kind of a, it starts with hair products and goes into really unexpected body horror. And I thought it was really, really great.
Title again, because I love that idea.
Renew You, and Renew, I think, is spelled cute, like REENU, something like that. The author's name is Michelle Tracy Berger.
Okay. The pen is out to scratch off things because you all kept taking everybody I wanted to mention.
Yeah. Oh, there are notes all over my margins of my paper now. I'm going to be, you guys just set my reading list for the next couple of months. Thank you.
Yeah, you definitely need some new names. I just, honestly, like literally, that's rough. But okay, don't forget Rena Mason. Her first book is crazy, unexpected. Like the thing, just read it. It's really, really, really good. Bridget Nelson came up with a new collection. It's brand new. It's called A Bouquet Full of Viscera, or Bouquet of Viscera. The cover's amazing, but it's like gross amazing. And I've just started that, and just love it. I love it. It's fantastic. You people took everybody else I had on my list. I will tell you my favorite novel though is Quietus, and it's written by Vivian Schilling. It's old, the 90s is not old to me, but that's when it came out. But it's a really phenomenal example of psychological horror. So if you're interested in the quieter side of stuff, Quietus by Vivian Schilling is amazing. Oh, the one more. Who's the, well, her name is escaping me right now. Oh my gosh. The zombie book. Oh my God. Oh no, come on. It's a zombie
I need more than just zombies.
I know.
No,
Right?
I'm like,
Like it was an antebellum South, perhaps? Yeah. Civil War zombie.
The Dread Nation book.
Dread Nation books.
Yeah, what is her name?
yes.
It's escaping me. What's her name?
Oh my
Gosh,
God.
I read them all and I can't.
Yeah.
Oh, crapperoonies.
Someone, let's look it up. Everybody's on the computer. Dread Nation, real quick. Yeah, this is live, folks. Ooh, Justina Ireland.
That's it.
That thing is, I got it right when it was still
Yes.
coming up. I think, yes, those books are fantastic. Let me just say. I couldn't put them down.
Amazing
So,
writer.
yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I'm sad to stop, to be honest. I still have questions on my list and I love talking with all of you, but we're already over the extra time that I asked for. So let's do this. On the way out the door, tell us, what you're working on now and where people can find you. And this time I will call on people. I'll go back with the original order. Linda, do you mind starting?
Not at all, at all. I was gonna I have a lot of stuff coming out this year and a lot that's come out already, but I'm just gonna highlight a couple of things. Apex Magazine, the latest issue, I have a nonfiction piece in there on how to hold on to the light. So, people were curious about how I managed to keep going. That's one. Two is Pixel Project, which put out Giving the Devil Its Due. All the money goes to support initiatives against women violence and so forth. So that's, they're doing bundles, they're, doing all kinds of cool stuff to raise money. And the last thing I'll mention is I'm the keynote speaker at the HWA StokerCon in Denver. So anyone who comes to the con, just come on up and say, hey, buy me a bottle, buy me a glass of wine.
Or a bottle, that'll be fine too.
And really though, if they're joining us, because I'll be seeing you there, perhaps I can just get a little sip. I just want a little sip. I want to have a sip of hers. Give me a sip of yours.
I share willingly.
Okay, Michelle. Oh, wait, before you go, Michelle, can I have a URL or anywhere that they can find you online, Linda?
AddisonWriter.com.
Okay. Michelle?
So my biggest thing lately is my Stoker nominated novel, Invisible Chains, was published in Spain.
Ooh,
and now I have fans in Spain and I'm super excited about that.
Awesome.
I know I'm working on a lot of different stuff. I'm working on short stories. I'm working on a 3 or 4 book series right now that I don't really think I should be talking about because I haven't signed anything. But they're expecting it and has a deadline. But mainly just working on short stories for anthologies. It's nice to be asked, so I better meet those deadlines, right?
Mm-hmm. Nice.
I will be at StokerCon.
Wow.
I'm super excited to see people's faces. And I theoretically have a blog called Girl Meets Monster, but I haven't touched it in a really long time. I need to get back up on that. But you can find me on social media. That's unfortunately where I spend a lot of time.
That blog is awesome though, by the way, just saying.
I'm getting back to it, I swear.
Samantha?
So my next horror that comes out will be in an anthology from Chrome Girls Press. This is a previous anthology that I also have a story in, and I don't actually know the name of the upcoming one, but I've had a story accepted. It's called The Other Jack, and I'm excited to see that one come out. But what I'm actually writing right now is the 5th and final menopausal superhero novel, because I have a deadline that I have a feeling I'm not quite going to meet. But I have a deadline for that one. And then my next project in line after that is my first Gothic romance. I'm finally going to write one after all these years of reading one.
Nice.
I'd written like, I don't know, maybe about half of it, and then I had to set it down so I could work on my next deadline. But that's what I'm going back to as soon as I'm done.
Fantastic. Lee? Oh, where can we find you? I'm sorry, Lee, hang on.
Just
Yeah.
Samantha Bryant. .com, and if you just Google Samantha Bryant with the word author, you'll get me. If you just use Samantha Bryant, you're going to find an actress who's married to one of the Hankses or something. I don't look the same in a ball gown. People don't usually get us confused.
Lee?
Well, that's being better than Lee Murray, who is the disgraced boxer in prison for doing the aggravated robbery. So, so I've been working hard to get he's very famous, so I've been working hard to get my name ahead of his on the Google site. So, yeah. So I'm actually just tingling with excitement because I've just finished editing with Angela Yuriko Smith a collection of essays by Asian women in horror. So super exciting. That's going to be published next year by Black Spot Books, and we're just about to send it off to Lisa Kroger for a forward. So just the power of these stories just still blowing me away. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm currently, as of yesterday, working on an Asian horror feature film. I'm doing the director's cut of that, so that's pretty exciting for me. Yeah, woohoo! And quite a lot of short stories coming, and a short story collection coming out the end of the year, I think, or beginning of next year from Silver Shamrock. So I don't know whether and a horror novel announcement coming in the next week or so. It's not written yet, but an announcement's coming. So very exciting stuff coming from me, and I just I don't know whether I'm coming or going. I'm not sure when I'm going to sleep, but I'm really very grateful for all of the opportunities that are coming my way through the horror community. So leemurray.info is my URL. Thank you.
Awesome. Wow. Okay, RJ?
So this month, I have a couple of short stories, a couple of anthologies just came out. Slasher with Candicia Press, and The Dead Inside with Dark Dispatch. This poetry thing is kind of sneaking up on me, and it's kind of really speaking to me because I also have a couple of poems in the collection coming out next month, I think, with Black Spot Books, Under Her Skin. So that's really exciting. I am very sad that I won't be at Stoker in person. Stoker falls on prom weekend for our senior, and I dare not. I gotta be here at home. But I will be doing a virtual academic presentation and hopefully be on some virtual panels. I mean, I'll be there virtually, between makeup and pictures and, escort servicing and stuff like that. And then later this year in the summer, oh my gosh, I have my first horror story collection coming out with The Seventh Terrace. So y'all are gonna be hearing me all the time talking about buy my book, please buy my book, please buy this, please buy this. I'm getting better at doing that. And so I'm super excited about it. And people can usually find me on Twitter because I just hang out there and haunt Twitter all the time. I don't have a grown-up website yet. Still working with a teenager to build that. So at R. Jackson Joseph, you can come holler at me on the Twitter.
That's awesome. See, and I love that I said, what do you guys have going on? And it was another 10 minutes because you all are so fabulous. You have all these amazing things happening. Oh my gosh, I'm excited to announce that I'm also in that Under Her Skin anthology. So I don't even write poetry that much, so I'm kind of like, I can't believe it. I'm so excited about that. And a couple of things coming up, but this was not about me. This was 100% about everybody you're seeing here. And so I just want to say thank you, my friends, for coming out and hanging out with me, because this was the conversation. Oh, go ahead, Linda.
One more thing I forgot I'm so excited about. I have a story in Predator, Eyes of the Demon coming out in June. Yes, I wrote a Predator story, and yes, it's real different.
Okay, right. I haven't done a read, seen, watched anything with Predator in a long time. I've been having to watch that, to read that, I should say. This is awesome. See, you guys are so dynamic. Women rule. This is what this panel was about. Okay. You guys are just amazing. You are inspirations, and I thank you for the conversation. I knew who I was inviting, and I was right about this. Thank you for being here, guys. We'll do this again.
My joy and pleasure being here with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.